Hey everybody, this is Steve. In today's video, I want to talk about another old NLP book. You might remember a short while ago, I looked at a book called Frogs into Princes. Today, I want to talk about a book which comes from a similar period, which is also based on NLP seminars, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, that were happening around 1979-1980. And that book is Trance-formations, also by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Now you might be wondering, why am I talking about a 40-year-old NLP book when my thing is coaching professional people to enjoy success with wellness? Well, first of all, NLP is one of the really powerful fields that I work with. I'm an advanced master practitioner and trainer of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP. And I think that NLP is still one of the great sources of ideas, skills and models for professional people who are looking to succeed with greater wellness. I don't think it's the only field, but I certainly think it's one of the fields that's very interesting. And while Trance-formations is ostensibly a book for therapists who want to learn how to use hypnosis, it's also a book about how we access personal resources that can help us with our confidence and our creativity and our clear thinking. I'm going to give 4 reasons why this book is still very interesting 40 years on. I'm going to give 2 caveats that you should bear in mind if you do read it. And I'm going to point out one specific thing that I like about this book in particular. And by the way, if you have any experience with NLP, or indeed if you've read the book Trance-formations or any further books related to that field, do let me know in the comments and let me know what you got out of it. I'm going to start with the 4 caveats. Caveat number 1 is, as I mentioned, this book is nearly 40 years old. It's not quite 40, but nearly. And NLP has moved on a lot in that time period. The developers behind this book, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, are constantly evolving and revising their work. And of course, they haven't worked together for many years, so their developments have gone in different directions. Other developers have come into the field and taken their developments in different directions. And so NLP today has moved on quite a lot from where it was when the seminars took place that these books were based on. For instance, what this book talks about in terms of reframing, which is from page 137 of this particular edition, is not something that Richard would teach anymore, because he's replaced it with better and more efficient methods, and they're what he teaches today. That said, a lot of the content of this book is still being taught today. The second caveat is something I've already mentioned, which is that it is ostensibly written as a book for therapists who want to learn to use hypnosis in therapy. Well, that's probably not you, in all fairness. But all that really means is that some parts of the book are not really aimed at you. But generally speaking, though, this book is about unlocking the potential of the unconscious mind. And that is potentially of interest to everybody. And now for the 4 reasons I still find this book really interesting, even though it is 40 years old. And that's quite apart from the fact that actually I do quite like old books. Now first, like I said in my video about Frogs into Princes, the books from around this time, from the seminars taking place around this time, convey more of what I consider to be the true spirit of NLP than the later books seem to do. And that's a spirit of discovery, of curiosity, of experimentation, of trying things out and seeing what's possible and utilizing what does prove to be possible. Most modern books don't really convey that. What most modern books do is they reduce neuro-linguistic programming into bullet points and stepwise techniques and just so ideas, and present it as if it is a fixed, closed and just so body of knowledge. And they don't really bring across this spirit of experimentation. I think these old books do. And secondly, the book is ultimately about thinking and states of resourcefulness and how we access those states. Now that's something that is potentially of interest to anybody who wants to think more clearly, who wants to access greater personal resourcefulness. For instance, the book talks about generating new behavior. It also talks about a specialized hypnotic technique called role model identification, which is where we effectively role model ourselves into somebody who's got more experience, got more knowledge, so that we can access and intuit some of their intuitive knowledge. The third thing I like about this book is, well, it is ultimately about trance states. Now, most people think about trance as a special state, but there's another way of looking at it, which is we're always in some kind of a trance. The only question is which one. The driving trance, the walking trance, the working trance, the relaxing trance, could be any of them. And when I think about trance states, I also think about meditative states, which assist with clear thinking. And the thing is, you can't read this book without experiencing some of that. Because it's not an academic book, because it's an anecdotal book, because it's a transcript of a live seminar, you get into the experience. And that's not just therapeutic, but it's also clarifying. The fourth thing I find interesting about this book is that, again, while it is ostensibly a manual for therapists who are looking to use hypnosis, the models which are actually applied here are the same basic models used in influential communication skills training, such as building deep rapport with other people and using language patterns that elicit certain responses. Pacing and leading, and even the structure of basic negotiation is actually covered in this book. It's actually a quaint 40-year-old window into skills which are still taught for communication skills today. Basically, it's a bit of a trippy communication skills book. Now, the particular thing I wanted to point out actually starts on page 213 of this particular edition. And that is self-hypnosis, which can be a very useful resource for professional people who are looking to succeed with wellness. Because again, whether you think about it as trance states or as meditative states, I don't see them as being especially different. The book here talks about how we can access those states for our own clarity. Now, in fairness, you don't have to get this exact book for that. You can get that in any number of books. It's just that for all the other things that I find interesting about that book, that is one of the really useful resources for professional people. So that, quite apart from my personal liking to delve into slightly old books and slightly antiquated books, is why I find this book particularly interesting. And if you do think about studying any kind of neuro-linguistic programming as part of your professional journey, please do look at the more modern books to get what's being taught today, but also do look at these. They do give a perspective that's really missing from a lot of the modern books.